Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast, the official podcast of SlashFilm.com. I'm David. Oh wait, actually, I just realized, guys, I didn't tweet this out. Let me tweet this out live right now. What?
Just looking at Twitter, waiting for your thing to come through, and I saw a couple of signs from the Women's March that I hadn't seen yet.
Yeah.
Sign game was strong.
It was a good sign game.
Did you guys see the one with the embroidered one? That the lady said, I was so pissed off I had to embroider this sign just so I could stab something 5,000 times.
Yes, that was a fun one.
All right. It has been tweeted.
Got it.
I'm going to begin. Or I'll wait until Devindra finishes typing.
That's not me.
Oh, or just...
That's me. Beware of spoilers, I'm writing. Beware of spoilers.
Good call. Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast, the official podcast of SlashFilm.com. I'm David Chen, and with me are...
Devindra Hardawar.
And Jeff Kanata.
And welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Today, all we're going to do is a review of Split and a After Dark for you guys, and that's pretty much all we got on... That's pretty much all we got in store for you guys today. But before we get to Split...
That's going to be more than enough, Dave. Don't say it like
so.
that. Don't say it like that. Come on.
Before we get to that, though, wanted to make an announcement. I am launching this experiment for the Slash Filmcast. I call it the Slack Filmcast. Get it? Because it's a... Anyway, I'm starting a Slack group. Now, for those of you who don't know what Slack is, it is a real-time collaboration tool that's used by many startups and teams these days. Devindra, I think you use this at your workplace, right?
Oh, yeah. My life is ruled by Slack right now.
Yeah. The last company I was at used Slack quite a bit. It's kind of like a chat room, but it's a series of chat rooms that are organized into different discussion topics, and there's a lot of tools and flexibility there. And so I thought, hey, let's try an experiment where we gather a bunch of Slash Filmcast listeners into the Slack and see what happens, see if we can talk about movies. Now, I will just say it is generally... probably most useful for something like a movie you just saw. You know, I'll create like a new channel for a movie you just saw, or a real-time event like Golden Globes or Oscars or something. We'll have a channel that talks about that. So that's kind of the use cases that I think would be best for it. So right now it's still a little bit unruly and disorganized. But if you want to join us and try it out, just go to slackfilmcast.com. That's SLACK. filmcast.com. Put in your name and your email address, and I'll send you an invite. And join us as we talk about movies like the one we're going to talk about today, Split, the new film by director M. Night Shyamalan. That was from the trailer of Split, the newest film by writer-director M. Night Shyamalan. I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. After 3 girls are kidnapped by a man with 24 distinct personalities, they must find some of the different personalities that can help them while running away and staying alive from the others. As I mentioned, this film was written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, and as of the time we're recording this, it is on track to make over $40 million at the box office this weekend, which is huge. I think the 4th largest January opening ever. And this movie, I cannot imagine it cost more than $10 million to make. It's a Blumhouse Productions film. They made movies like M. Night Shyamalan's last movie, The Visit, and The Purge. Like, they do a lot of low-budget movies. And a lot of them have like a budget of no more than $5 million. This looks like it might have been a little bit higher than that, but I'm not sure. Regardless, it probably cost less than $40 million, and I think this movie is on like probably going to do potentially like $100 million. Who knows? Like it could do really well. And this is like, I guess the next step in M. Night Shyamalan's comeback. You know, I think this movie is going to see him making more and bigger films. And that's something that's pretty exciting, depending on how much you like M. Night Shyamalan.
So is it the Shyamalasans or the Shyamalanasans?
Yeah, I
like
don't
the latter.
I like
Yeah,
the second
latter.
one. Yeah,
You say that again, Devindra?
the Shyamalanasans.
Shyamalanasans. I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
All right.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how long people have been listening to this podcast or how old you are, but it's easy to forget that there was a period in time when M. Night Shyamalan movies were major events that would rake in tons of box office.
He was the new kid on the block. The next Spielberg, they called him.
When you come out with The Sixth Sense, I think that was his third film in 1999. That movie made $673 million in 1999 money. That is incredible. And I think it was at, like, number one at the box office for like 5-6 weeks. So,
and not only that, it was a cultural phenomenon.
Yes,
You know, it
yes.
created, it changed a lot of things, and it turned. I mean, I think that movie is probably has a bigger hand in spoiler culture than most. I think because it was arriving around the same time that the internet was happening in full force, and I think
was happening in full force.
Hey, because that's another of his movies. Yeah,
But
it was like we were all a part of a global village. You know,
What was
there was a
interesting
lady
about-
in the water.
He was ushering in the signs of a new box office, behemoth that would be his name, and that would ultimately prove to be, unfortunately, not Unbreakable.
And then he
And that turned out
airbended
to
his
be-
career, guys.
Yeah, and that movie was the last Airbender that he. No, I don't.
I don't know. One thing to point out about The Sixth Sense too, like, it was a mature genre film, and that was something like the '90s was not good for a lot of genre movies, I think, and just having a grown-up ghost story was kind of nice and different and refreshing.
Yeah, and not only that, but as Jeff indicated, it gave us, one of the probably most famous lines in all of cinema history, "I see dead people."
That's cultural impact, by the way.
Yeah, that is cultural relevance, Jeffrey.
No, nobody's arguing that, guys. Nobody's arguing that.
No one says "I see you."
It's definitely.
Jeff, I'm going to give you so much crap in the After Dark about After Dark cultural relevance. It's going to be awesome. But before we get to that,
People are always conflating the two, and they always say, "I see you, dead people."
so very good, Jeff. So anyway, Unbreakable, $248 million, Signs, $408 million. He was box office magic, this guy, and then made a bunch of movies in a row that didn't do very well. Lady in the Water, The Happening. Last Airbender made $320 million, but was very terribly reviewed. No one was happy with that film.
Yeah. One of the worst movies I've ever seen. So,
it's awful. I mean, Devindra, you're a huge fan of that series.
It broke my heart, too.
I still remember.
It's not only a bad movie, but it broke my heart.
I remember how upset you were when you saw that film, yeah.
And then I had to talk to him the day after I saw that movie. So that was my first, big interview, too. And, man, he's a nice guy, but it's hard to, reconcile that with destroying a property you love.
Yeah.
Then he made movies like, as we mentioned, The Happening was very bad as well. But he made After Earth, which was not written by him. He kind of, or not primarily written by him, if I recall correctly.
Not really directed by him.
But he kind of ended up in director's jail, and he did what a lot of directors do when they're in director's jail, which is they make a movie with Blumhouse Productions. And
also, Dave, I think it bears mentioning too, and I know people already know this, but it's an interesting phenomenon, his career, because as we said, he made such a big splash with the surprise ending of Sixth Sense. But then as his movies progressed, he almost became a parody of himself, or at least the impression of him.
Yep.
Like, everybody loved the surprise until they hated it. Right?
Robot
Until
Chicken still makes fun of that.
Right.
That's the thing. And that show's still going on, over 10 years now? But, man.
Yeah, and there would be... I remember when Devil came out, that movie, that he didn't even direct that film.
But his name was in the trailer.
His name was in the trailer, and there was a video that went viral of an M. Night Shyamalan production or whatever coming up on screen, and then everyone in the audience laughing.
That happened
M.
at
Night
my
Shyamalan.
theater here in New York.
People were laughing at the name M. Night Shyamalan, which is a name that they used to revere.
Right.
And yeah, it was kind of tragic. It was kind of tragic. But anyway, I agree with you, Jeff. It is like a very interesting phenomenon. And he made a Blumhouse movie, which is basically a very low budget film, typically like under $5 million. But they have there's some benefits to doing that. Number one, complete creative control, as long as you do not exceed the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, if the movie does really well, then you end up getting some back end points. So you're kind of like putting all of your faith in that the movie will do well. So
and
he
you're
made
talking about The Visit. Yeah, The Visit, right?
The Visit, yeah, made $98.5 million, and
Nice.
it was kind of like a return to form for him. So
You
now,
liked it. Yeah.
now he follows it up with Split. And now that we've gotten to the end of that very lengthy preamble to our review, we need to say that we will be spoiling Split right from the top, because it is a movie that you cannot discuss, really, unless you know what the ending is and what it implies and all that stuff. So,
And we're not fucking around here, people. Listen to what we say. We're spoiling the movie. I'm asking you not to listen to this episode. Here's me coming to you, just one guy standing in the rain, asking you not to listen to this episode.
Jeff's a boy standing in front of a Slash Filmcast audience, asking them not to listen to the episode.
Turn it off if you haven't seen the movie, please.
We need like an extreme spoiler warning with like air horns just for movies like this. Like no, stop listening.
Off, yes, off. I'm talking to you, the guy who's like, I don't care about spoilers. Off, turn it off.
I mean, I don't know if you guys have gotten the impression that Jeff doesn't want you to get spoiled in this movie. I certainly did, by the fact that he tweeted it 50 times in the last week.
But dude, can I tell you how
you
many
gotta be low key about it.
How many thank yous I've gotten for that? For people like, I wasn't planning to see it. Thank you so much for urging me. I didn't know anything about it. Thank you. Like, it's a thing. All I want is, more than anything, is to give people, not give, I'm not the one giving, but
You're
to
dispensing it from your infinite generosity.
To ensure that the most people have as close to the experience I had in seeing that movie, because of how grateful I was for the experience I had in seeing that movie. I want that people to give themselves that gift of having that experience. So turn off this podcast. Turn it off.
If you haven't seen the movie. If you have,
stick around.
Otherwise keep listening.
If you have, keep listening. All right. Any other, like, we're kind of vamping here to give people time to reach the pause button on their podcast. And any other warning you want to give people, Jeff? I think that's it, right? Just
we're not fucking around here.
You are robbing yourself of something potentially magical.
Yes.
If you continue listening, not having seen the film.
Right.
So, with that being, just for that, I'm just gonna put the spoiler button in right here as well. Boom. Okay. So people just
now we end this episode and we start a new episode. So they have to physically choose to start another episode.
No, they have to warn everybody again.
Oh, that's true. Damn it. We get into the infinite loop of warnings.
So, okay. Split. Now that we are in total spoiler zone, Jeff, I kind of want you to tell me about your reaction upon seeing this movie, because I've never seen you react that way to a film. I've been podcasting with you for years now. I've never seen you react that way to a film.
I was shaking in my seat. First of all, I saw it at a press screening with a bunch of people whose opinions I respect, and I could not help myself. I exclaimed, like vocally said, "Oh my God!" at the end of that movie. And there was I was not the only one doing that. There was a guy a few rows away from me who literally, this was a press person, who was saying out loud over and over, "The best ending of all time." All time.
So you were at the screening with that guy that Amy Nicholson tweeted about.
Yes.
Oh, you didn't mention that. Okay, so basically, Amy Nicholson tweeted after she saw the film. The film critic from MTV News tweeted like that someone was leaving the screening saying, "The best ending of all time," just screaming it. Right?
He was sitting in his chair as the credits were rolling, saying that over and over, like at loud volume. And I think I know who it was. I'm not going to out him, but Dude, I
Peter
was
Serrano from Slash Film. No, okay. Anyway.
the lady sitting next to me turned because she saw me because I was all by myself. I was at a press screening. I go by myself often because my wife just has to stay home with the kid. But it's a packed screening. I was between two people I didn't know. The lady, because I don't do buffer seats, Dave. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I heard. Yep.
The lady sitting next to me turned to me and went, "What did I miss? What just happened?" I was like, I can't. And then I was shaking in my chair. I walked out in the lobby. Andy Signor from Honest Trailers was there. We were both like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. How do we even like? We can't overhype it. I was like, oh, I think I already tweeted a few things. I probably should delete those.
Yes.
And then I went to the parking lot and I texted you, Dave, because I knew you had already seen it. And I was in my car. I couldn't turn my car on. I was shaking in my car. I was like, I was physically affected. And like you and I texted back and forth, and then you at some point went, "I have to call you because I need to hear your voice right now."
Yep.
So if you're still listening to this and you haven't seen the movie, give yourself that experience.
Well, you're still giving spoiler warnings. Even we're 15 minutes in. You're still giving spoiler warnings. Okay.
I talk a lot on the show about Unsullied, about protecting myself from spoilers and all that stuff. The reason I do all that stuff, there's a spectrum of enjoyment, right? This is the furthest extreme of that enjoyment. This is the only other time I've experienced anything like this was when Samuel L. Jackson walked out at the end of Iron Man and said, I want to recruit you for the Avengers Initiative. I remember I was with people that I care for, and I stood up in my chair and put my both arms in the air and screamed out, "Yes!" That feeling is so magical. It's so magical to be completely broadsided by something that you didn't expect, but it is exactly what you always wanted. It's magic. Anyway, so I don't know if now we just sort of like go in and talk about it, or Davinja, you had a similar experience of that kind of feeling, right?
Well, definitely. So I was watching at the Alamo Draft House here in New York City. Alamo, which has a lot of rules about, the noise you can make and shit. And even though I knew it was the end of the movie, I had to like contain my excitement too, because I feel a little restricted there sometimes. But I was like, I told my wife, like that music. I know what this is, and it's like the slow realization of what this movie happened. Yeah, I was freaking out in my seat. I was very sad that nobody else in my audience was, but it was like a matinee screening, so maybe they didn't even know what it really meant.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say. I was actually quite disappointed in the film that had come before the ending, but I will say this: it is incredibly ballsy. Yes. What he did. And I think, Jeff, the way you put it when we were talking on the phone was really astute. You said, you've never seen anything like this, a movie disguised as another movie.
That's exactly what he did.
Which I don't think...
one movie as another movie.
Right, which I agree. Like, I've been racking my brain to think about it, and I can't really think about it. And there are movies that don't turn out like what you think they will be, but there's rarely movies that like are in a completely kind of category or genre than what you think they're going to be. Right?
I think Unbreakable is that, right? The first time I saw Unbreakable, we got to the end and I realized, oh my God, I've been watching a superhero movie this entire time.
Mm-hmm. But we knew that was going to be like a comic book movie.
I don't remember knowing that.
Yeah, Jeff probably. I mean, I didn't know that either.
I remember it being marketed as this like thriller from the guy who did The Sixth Sense.
Right. You're right.
It was about a train crash, and it was really dark, and it was like eerie and moody, and another movie from The Sixth Sense guy. So you think like sort of like pseudo horror thriller movie.
Yeah, and it's him sneaking his genre sensibilities into like adult dramas, basically.
Right. And then you get to the end of that and you go, oh my God, no, we've been watching a superhero origin movie this entire movie. Right. And, you talk about it with like a Borat movie. You go, oh my God, it sucks because you could never make a sequel to Borat because now he's so famous that everybody would be like, the Borat guy, so he could never do that trick again.
Yeah.
And kind of think the same thing with Unbreakable. You go, well, you could do a sequel to Unbreakable, and we've all been clamoring for a sequel to Unbreakable for many, many years. You know, every time M. Night would go to a convention, the first question would be like, are you working on a sequel to Unbreakable? Can we get a sequel to Unbreakable? Because Unbreakable ends and you go, oh my God, I want to see more in this universe. And you think to yourself, you could do a sequel to Unbreakable, but it would have to start out as a sequel to Unbreakable. You couldn't pull the same trick again because we'd all know. And he fucking did. He did.
So I want to say, like, in our Slack, we have a channel called Split Spoilers, where people have been talking about spoilers for the movie Split, and it's been such a joy to read people's reaction to, you know, seeing Split and what they felt. Ryan Ferguson shared in the chat, I've been listening to the Unbreakable score for 15 years. It's on my reading/getting stuff done playlist. Listened to it on heavy rotation all throughout undergrad and high school. Undergrad and grad school, I should say. So when that first bar of the Unbreakable score dropped, I sat bolt upright in my chair. What is going on here? And then I started freaking out, started thinking, if Bruce Willis pops up, I'm going to lose my damn mind. And then he did, and I did. I haven't ever had a cinematic experience like this. It took me hours to come down from the adrenaline high.
Yeah. And repeating the last line from Unbreakable, by the way. Like, it was like it was an ice cream sundae with like all the toppings, and then they called him Mr. Glass, cherry on top, end movie. I do want to say though, like, as much as I enjoy the experience, we should probably talk about it separately from the movie itself, because I think the movie easily could have not been an Unbreakable sequel. It could have just been its own separate thing, and I think you could still judge it as that, because the movie has problems too. Like, I don't think just because it's tied into the Unbreakable universe that makes those problems go away.
I agree. So let's dive into that.
Well,
but
let me just say,
go ahead.
Let me just say real quick, because that was what Dave kept saying to me when we were texting back and forth, and I agree with you 100%, Devindra. I enjoyed the movie up to that point too, and then it got amazing. But I also feel like the thing I said to Dave was, it also doesn't matter. Like, all of the flaws in the movie up to that point cease to matter,
right?
Because the magic trick is so much better than any other magic trick. I mean, here's a guy who's famous for pulling magic tricks, who is a parody of himself. People talk about the Shyamalan ending. You know, it's a joke, and he so completely outdoes himself. With that, like, he pulls off a bigger trick than he's ever pulled off before. Yeah. Not only that, but the commitment to it. Because if this movie had been marketed as Unbreakable 2, it would make so much more money.
You think?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I actually do think, like, the Unbreakable hardcore fans, like us, we are not a large crowd. Is the thing. Like, that movie was successful, but I also, like, I talked to a lot of people. My wife didn't get
a lot of people just didn't really, because this is from, you know, it's over a decade old, you know, like a lot of people don't even know. So I guess and we've seen this year, 2016 I should say, how badly, you know, sequels have performed from, you know, movies that people didn't
but I'm telling you, like, if you know, I love our friend Dan Trachtenberg, and I love his movie, but if that movie had not been called Cloverfield and had come out and had been surprise Cloverfield, it would not have made as much money as it. It would not have.
No, I agree completely with you in that case.
But that's different.
However, but I believe that's different.
It's the same exact thing. I think.
Well, I think it's completely different because, firstly, like, the Cloverfield name still has a lot of stock. Like, the JJ name still has a lot of stock.
People know what that is. Yeah.
I think Unbreakable has. I think when you talk about Shyamalan,
hold on. I'm sorry. One last thing, Jeff, before you go into that is that the other thing is that if you had sold this as an Unbreakable sequel, it would have been incredibly confusing to people.
Yes,
because Unbreakable is a Bruce Willis led comic book origin story.
It wouldn't have been the same film. Like, he wouldn't have. I don't think you just do a title change. The whole movie is structured for that reveal. The entire film, and it's an extraordinary experience. Like, he's the only filmmaker I think that really does this, which is you get to the final moment and you have to completely rethink through everything you've seen, because you literally thought you were watching one movie and you were watching a different movie, and it's not just a quaint twist. It really was always structured to be that second movie.
Yeah.
You just didn't know it.
I think this is the biggest and best twist he's ever done too. Like it is a wonderful hat trick. It blew my mind. And I also remember being in the theater and seeing the Unbreakable ending too, and like that still has a lot of impact. But I don't know if you recontextualize the movie with that in place, if it changes much. Is the thing. Like ultimately, this movie is a sort of like an origin story of a villain. Just like Unbreakable was an origin story.
We've been dancing around it the whole time, but basically the ending is, for those who aren't clear on it, the ending is you find out that this movie takes place in the same universe as Unbreakable. A, takes place in the same universe as Unbreakable. B, has events in it directly impacted by the events that happen in Unbreakable.
I would say that, I mean, because during the course of the movie, at a certain point, when he reaches his final state, and he has to go to a train station. I was like, what the fuck? What is that about?
Yeah.
Well, it's clear what that's about. Like, it's clear that Mr. Glass created both Bruce Willis's character and James McAvoy's character in the same moment.
Yeah, that's a nice little bit of symbolism too. Like, I love how they're both born there, and the movie drops a lot of hints that it is tied into that universe. Like, did you guys have the inkling at all while watching it? Because while the therapist was explaining things like, what if these people are more than us? What if these traumas they went through? And that actually is how they refer to a lot. That's how Elijah talked about Bruce Willis's powers.
Yes. Yeah, the language is very similar.
Yes.
Yeah,
and then that started clicking, and the train imagery was like it. That was like, I started thinking in maybe at the beginning of the last act, like, what if this was an Unbreakable sequel? That would be pretty cool, huh? Nobody would ever do that. Like, who's crazy enough to do that? This guy is, apparently.
Well, the whole movie, I had this weird sense of, like, I've never seen one of these, trapped in a space movies. We've got a lot of those. We've got, Green Room, 10 Cloverfield Lane.
The Invitation.
The Invitation.
Yeah.
There was, what was the one about the blind guy?
Don't Breathe.
Don't Breathe. So there's a lot of those recently. So I'm in that headspace, right? And I'm going, boy, I really haven't seen any of those movies that are this unconcerned with the people in peril.
Yeah.
Like, this movie just doesn't seem to care about them. So there's all these weird hints that, like, I'm not really watching the movie I think I'm watching. And then at the end you realize, I get it. It all makes sense by the end, and you realize all this information you were being fed, all the stuff that the therapist was saying, all the things about the people who are hurt are really special. All of that directly ties into the messaging from Unbreakable, where trauma and hardship is what triggers superhuman abilities. It's amazing. The other thing he does that I think is so amazing in this movie is he trolls his detractors a bit because one of the things that we always have said, in fact, we even said it during the Visit review quite frequently, is that the M. Night trope is the one thing we know about our heroes is the one thing that saves them, right? The only thing we know about all these characters as we go through the movie, we know that what's his name doesn't drink water, so he leaves these cups of water all around. It's the one thing that is his salvation at the end. And
the little girl left the water, but yeah.
Yes, excuse me, yes. Swing away is the only thing we know.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
In this case, we keep getting flashbacks to this girl learning how to be an awesome hunter. And we see this guy turning into the beast. And we're clearly led to believe the one thing we know about her is going to be her salvation. And yet, it turns out the one thing we didn't know about her, which is really the real point of all these flashbacks, that she's a cutter. Like, we didn't know that until the last moment. That is her salvation. Like, that is a reveal. And her being able to shoot or not shoot that gun is immaterial to her salvation. It had nothing to do with it. In fact, it would not have saved her if the guy would have just kept going through the gunshots and eaten her. Right?
It's not as neat as his other movies, for sure. Like, that I think is one of the big problems people have with the ending of Signs, is that it fits together too neatly and it's kind of a joke. But it does feel like it relies on some of those tropes as well. That's all. Like, you raise a good point too, Jeff.
I think he's subverting the trope. I think he's saying, I led you to believe I was going to do the same trick I always do, and this is not that movie. We're in a different place right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jeff, I mean, I really love your enthusiasm for this film. You know, I don't want to stomp on it in any way.
But shut the hell up.
But no, well, why don't we talk about the movie itself? Like, put aside the ending, put aside the fact that this basically is a origin story for a villain in the Unbreakable universe, right? That's what it ends up being. And let's talk about the movie itself. Let's talk about the experience of the movie up until the final 20 seconds of the movie, right? And what did we think of that? I will say that like I somewhat enjoyed the film, but found it had a lot of problems. Here's what I really liked about the movie. I think like Shyamalan's instincts for creating tension are still very much intact. Specifically, like he has a really great way of moving the camera. Like he does these incredibly slow camera dollies that are just like it makes you feel like you are slow, like the frame is kind of like closing in on you. You know, like it's very like
it's unsettling.
It's unsettling. It feels like something's not quite right with his world. Like the world is not quite still. It's like slightly moving around you, and the tension and suspense he's able to create is really wonderful. I do want to. I need to say this because you know I don't want to ignore the idea that this movie might not be offensive, but I mean the way this movie handles mental illness, pretty problematic. I would say.
I kind of think that's saying the way that the Joker handles mental illness is problematic. I think
we didn't know that while we're watching it. That's the thing. Like we didn't have the context that this is in the context of a comic book movie. I thought I was just watching a thriller.
But then it was, right? But then it was.
Yeah, but that doesn't affect how you initially saw it.
So I don't agree with you, Jeff. I think that the fact that they're referring to like a real life condition, they call it by the technical name, you know, in this movie, like and for
but that real life condition gives you superpowers. You can't.
That's true.
You can't ignore that. Like it's not. But we're not in that place.
Yeah. Even before the superpowers, though, like the stuff that happens in the movie, I would argue people could find plausible. Look, I'm not going to dwell on this. I just wanted to say one quick thing about it, and then we can move on. But I did want to acknowledge that some people in the mental health community have come out and said, like, the way this movie handles mental illness could be pretty damaging. There's an article of The Guardian, I'll link to the show notes. It says it's entitled "From Split to Psycho: Why Cinema Fails Dissociative Identity Disorder, or DID," which is what this movie, the James McAvoy character, has in this movie. Quote, "Movies such as Split can be extremely damaging," argues Dr. Simone Reinders, a neuroscientist studying DID at King's College in the Netherlands. They make it seem as if patients with DID are extremely violent and prone to doing bad things. This is actually not true, and it very badly misrepresents a psychiatric disorder. Individuals with DID definitely do not have a tendency to be violent, more a tendency to hide their mental problems. I'm very concerned about the effects that the movie will have for patients with DID and how the general public will now see those patients. There's already a lot of stigma and skepticism concerning this specific disorder." End quote.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And we talked about that too around The Visit, right? And about dementia and dealing with older people as well. Like he's taking these things that exist.
He's taking these things that exist that are kind of like somewhat normal. Like in the case of dementia and old people, like somewhat normal. In the case of DID, it is not some like far out there mental illness that like people have never heard about, and making them frightening and scaring and scary and unknown. And that's very effective as a movie going technique, like a filmmaking technique. But I do think it has like some problems with the real world. So you can make up your mind as to whether or not you're bothered by that. But I would feel remiss if we did not at least mention that there's possibilities that some people who know people with DID or who have DID themselves will find this movie like incredibly upsetting and disturbing. So
it's worth pointing out for sure. And honestly, I was a little disturbed by the way he uses emotional abuse as well and sexual abuse, because this is something we've seen hinted at in some things too, like in Unbreakable. Like there's that sequence where the big fight scene is with that the janitor who takes over that house and like kills the parents and ties up the girls. There's a lot of like hints towards things where it's a little disturbing, and it I don't know, it's a little strange how he uses it, but in this movie in particular, it feels like
I think
he's handling heavy things and he doesn't know how to do it really.
So I have this other podcast called Gen Pop where we talk about like pop culture stuff, and we had this conversation with Maureen Ryan recently about using sexual violence in films, and films and TV. And a lot of people, a lot of showrunners, a lot of writers and directors use sexual violence as a shortcut to be like, hey, this woman has a very disturbing and troubled backstory, and like just put in some kind of molestation or rape, and like that automatically makes them complex.
We have TV series entirely based around that idea. That is SVU. You know, like, come on.
Yeah. So I think the question is like, does the movie just use it for that purpose alone? And if so, it's probably not doing a service to that particular storytelling device. Now, Jeff, I think your argument is like, hey,
my argument is that it's like saying that burn victims should be offended by Two-Face in Batman, or people with respiratory problems should be offended by Bane. It's and I think maybe the only problem is that they actually use the official term DID. Maybe if he just didn't use that term, it wouldn't be as offensive to you. But he's working in a realm of utter fiction, and I think
the movie is not utter fiction until the last 15 minutes.
It's all utter fiction.
It's all utter fiction,
like,
but I mean,
yeah.
It feels very plausible to me in the universe of the movie. Like the universe of the movie could exist in our real world until the last 15 minutes.
No, the entire movie, the psychiatrist is saying, "I have this new theory about DID that they are better than us. They're superior. That they have superpower." I mean, the whole movie is building toward using this.
Go ahead, Jeff. Finish what you're saying.
Yeah.
I can understand, because you use the official term, that you maybe feel a little offended that you use that as a jumping off point to create this fiction. But to say the movie gives a false representation of what it's like to have that thing, it's not trying to create. At no point is it trying to create a actual authentic vision of someone living with that disease. It's not that movie.
Well, Jeff, I hope everyone who watches this movie is as enlightened as you and can make that determination. But I don't have that much faith in everyone who's watching this movie. Like that's
and
the
level of genre this movie is working on too isn't very clear until the end. Like until the Beast shows up and it's like, oh, we are actually doing this.
Well, the other point is that the central theme of both this movie and Unbreakable is that all of these things that we see as being detriments in our lives actually empower us. That is the central metaphor for the Unbreakable universe, is that through great trying trauma and things that we are actually all unbreakable, that these things that you feel make us broken are not what make us broken. They make us who we are, and they are to be embraced and celebrated. And, obviously you don't encourage a girl to be, sexually abused by her uncle. But the idea is that she is not broken. That's what this movie is saying over and over again. This man is not broken because he has this disease. I think it actually has a pretty positive message when you come right down to it. But I can understand that if you hear that term and you go, well, this isn't how that actually is in real life. Yeah. But I don't think the movie is claiming that at any point.
Sure. The way the movie wraps up her story, like her emotional arc, I think works. Like that fits into the Unbreakable mold. That fits into a really emotionally resonant idea. It's just leading up to that. I think we're seeing a very traditional story of a girl being abused at a young age and trying to work through that trauma and dealing with it, at an older age. So I'm glad that the movie made that turn, but it's still relying on a lot of those tropes up until then. That's worth pointing out.
I found it, agreed with Devindra, with one exception. I found the wrapping up of that particular plotline to be incredibly unsatisfying. You might say that, hey, the Anya Taylor-Joy character's plotline that won't truly reach its fruition until the second movie in this series. And if that's the case, okay, fine. But I don't think that I did not find that to be a satisfying ending for her story. A lot of people in the Slack were asking well, what was the point of showing us all? What was the point of showing us all that stuff? At the end of the movie, you expect something to happen with the uncle. It's left ambiguous. Why not close that arc off in some way? I didn't understand.
The whole thing is a swerve. The whole thing is a swerve. That's my interpretation.
What does that mean? Say more about that, Jeff.
You are led to believe that this is her story, and it is not her story. It is, and all of the stuff that you are shown, all of her flashbacks, you think are for one purpose, and they are not.
That feels like an excuse, though. We cannot let. I love the last 30 seconds of this movie. I love the potential for where this series is headed. But as a story, this is Claire's story and her story of being captured by this dude and her emotional. I do think there is a scene where the police officer is asking like, your guardian is here to see you, and the girl looks at her, and then the police officer looks at her.
Yeah, so
And I think
maybe something will happen, but you don't know.
that's
The movie
that's
doesn't.
saying
The movie
something.
doesn't tell you. And and Jeff, like I find that I don't know, unsatisfying, possibly upsetting that the movie's just like, hey, we'll throw in a bunch of this stuff in here about you learning how to hunt and getting sexually traumatized as a young kid. But by the way, the movie's not even about you. And you have basically zero agency, and you only made it out of this event for no reason, for no reason of your own doing. Like it's just because of stuff that happened to you.
That's a misreading of what I just said, in my opinion.
Well, no, I'm not.
What the movie is saying, and what happens in that last moment is that the beast, or the horde, as he's going to be called, I guess, recognizes her as also having gone through shit.
Yeah.
Right? And the central message of the movie is we who have endured hardship are superior. We are the whole point of the girls who got eaten is they never had a hard thing in their whole life. They everything came easy to them. And so the supervillain perspective is they are worthless. They are food for us, right? And the movie is what the movie is saying in that moment is all of the stuff that we saw her endure and go through. She had to galvanize a strength inside her to get through it. To the idea of I acted out in school just so I could be alone is her becoming a more autonomous being. Is her saying I can be by myself, right? I found it very empowering, this idea, and I came away from the end of her like going back to her uncle as she went through this, and that uncle is not going to have a happy moment. Like she is, you know, I don't know. I came away with it going, oh, things have changed for her. Things have.
Well, we don't quite know, and I think that look at the cop, I wish there was more to that scene, like maybe another beat where she was like, you know, I need to tell you something.
Yeah, fundamentally it is unresolved. Like the movie does not resolve that, and I feel like the movie is setting me up to expect a resolution to that particular plotline, because when you're playing with stakes that big, when you're playing with sexual violence as a storytelling technique, like you need to find a way to justify that, and I did not think the movie did that for me.
Just another beat, like another minute of that scene would have really wrapped up that story a lot better, I think. But yeah, we should probably talk about like it as a thriller too, because I think we're getting bogged down.
Yeah, so I mean, Jeff, I feel like I'm coming off pretty negative on this movie, which overall I was kind of negative on this movie.
You liked it the least of us.
But talking to you like intensifies my negative feelings because you are so ridiculously positive. Like I'm like digging in my heels because you are so relentlessly positive on this film.
I'm not saying that the movie didn't have flaws. I agree with Devendra. The movie is not perfect, and I had a heck of a fun time watching it. But I also recognize that, you know, it wasn't perfect throughout. But for me, and I know I'm maybe overemphasizing this point, but the ending completely changed everything for me. And the feeling that I got from that ending and the way I completely, in the moments and days since, have thought through moment to moment the experience of watching it and looked at that each scene through a different lens because he presented the movie. He switched it up so profoundly at the end that I had to. That experience makes it one of the greatest in-theater moments ever for me. And that says a lot. Now, I'm happy to have the conversation of the things the movie, you know, doesn't do great throughout. But I also have to say I had a blast watching it. I really was having fun. I would never say, oh, this is a great movie. But it's a fun movie. It really doubles down on having a good time, putting me in intense situations. And I honestly had no idea where it was going. I really didn't.
I mean, it's a great ending, but a few times, Jeff, you've mentioned the fact that, you know, the ending kind of recontextualizes or makes some of the problems less problematic in this film, and I reject that idea because those problems still exist. It's just a great ending, and it shows us where this could all be headed. But I think the movie itself is a little too long. I did get a little, like, I got bored with the situation somewhere towards the middle. We spend too much time with the therapist.
Yeah.
Oh, she's
and
great. I loved her.
she's good, but you can really focus a little more on that character. I feel like we spend a lot of time with her and her lectures and things like that, which are just not as essential to this film. I really wanted to focus on the girls and kind of what they were doing. And this is also another movie of trapped people doing very, very dumb things. So that's the thing, right? Like when we watch 10 Cloverfield Lane, I feel like that's a very a rational movie in terms of how it depicts someone being trapped, right? You try to get out, you try to attack your attacker, you do something more. This movie works really hard to make the girls not do anything for a while, and then they start doing things, and it's not always the smartest things. So I just feel like there's a lot of like plot reasons why they didn't all just like attack him immediately or do something else. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a good thriller. I'm not saying it's a bad thriller. It's just not as strong to me as something like 10 Cloverfield Lane or even Room, honestly.
I will say, I don't. It's funny you refer to Room as a thriller. Like I did not find Room to be a thriller at all.
Well, the first half.
The first half, yeah, maybe, but even that I didn't really think was like I didn't take away the thriller elements from that. Primarily, here's what I'll say about how good the movie is. In my opinion, Anya Taylor-Joy, who plays Casey Cook, is the real deal. And I thought, we've seen her in The Witch. I watched her in this movie Morgan that you guys haven't seen. Devindra, I think you turned it off on the plane.
I watched 5 minutes of that movie. No,
she's the best part of that movie, though. She's the best part of that movie. I mean, I think she has a really strong future ahead of her in the like genre film, and maybe even other. Like, I totally believed all of her emotions in this movie, and I thought she was like the best part. The second best part. James McAvoy. Putting aside whether or not the DID depiction is problematic, there's a reason why actors are drawn to roles like this. It's because they give you the opportunity to really test your range and inhabit these different personalities in the same role. And I think he does a magnificent job. Like, sometimes
he's clearly having so much fun.
Yeah, he's having a lot of fun and doing a pretty convincing job, in my opinion. Like, I felt like, hey, the premise of this movie is like a little bit ridiculous and certainly gets very, very fantastical at the end, but he sold it the whole time. The only part where it kind of fell short was at the ending. My audience was laughing during the final 10 minutes anytime the beast showed up.
Although that sequence of him coming down the hallway and like hitting out the lights, I think that's pure Shyamalan.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of hokey, but I love the way that was constructed and the way it looks.
Classic Shyamalan, but yeah.
But
that's not even James McAvoy's fault either. It's more the directing decision. The way that those sequences played out, it just looked a little bit silly to a lot of people. And I think, to my point earlier, it undercut a lot of what this movie was until that point, which was a fairly grounded thriller. Like it mostly could take place in this world, other than that crazy stuff the therapist woman was saying about DID and how it unlocks all this potential. Like all that stuff feels like it could be like The Visit, which is another movie that, like I said, could take place in our real world. And I just don't think people were expecting what happened at the end, and because what happened at the end, the budget probably wasn't super high for this movie. Some of the shots looked a bit goofy. The reaction was laughter from my audience. How about you, Jeff?
I didn't hear any laughter. I just couldn't believe we were kind of going there in that moment. I was like, really? He really can climb on walls and stuff? This movie is really not what I thought it was going to be.
He's like a super villain.
He's kind of like a super villain.
That's when I started thinking that. Yeah,
but. I know you guys are going to get mad at me for saying this, but I kind of feel like you're saying, man, that magician placing all those cards in front of me, that was kind of boring. Like it was really, I don't believe that anybody would play poker by like putting all the cards face up in front of me. Oh, he put all the aces at the bottom. Oh, well, now I get, okay, that's cool. But that other stuff at the beginning when he was putting all the cards face up, that just didn't seem believable as the way anybody would play poker. It's like, it's not fucking about that.
Well, Jeff, I think
you're doing the thing again.
Yeah. Well, I know.
That's what I said. You guys are going to get mad at me for saying it. But
I don't know.
It's weird to me to say, for you guys to say like, oh, this thing at the end isn't the movie. Like it always was the movie. It was always that.
It's effectively
not a stinger.
Here's where I disagree with you, Jeff. Like, if you watch The Sixth Sense, and maybe you'll say this is different. Like, maybe you'll say this is different. But Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, those movies are still enjoyable as movies, even without the twist at the end. in my opinion, at least.
But I don't understand why the twist at the end is not the movie.
It's barely a twist. It's more of a surprise, which somebody in our chat room said. It's more of like, hey, by the way, it's also part of this thing. It doesn't fundamentally change the events that
disagree
happen.
with that.
It just changes the context of how we see the movie a little.
I think this movie was always a movie about how James McAvoy's character turns into a supervillain.
Sure.
And we think that it's not. It's disguised as a movie that's not. But once you realize it was always that, you kind of don't criticizing it for being the movie you thought it was when it was never that movie seems silly to me.
I think this is a really interesting point, Jeff. Like, I don't know that I have an answer on that. Like, because on the one hand, I think you're right. Like, it is its own different movie. In fact, M. Night Shyamalan has said that this Kevin character was supposed to be in Unbreakable. There's an interview in Digital Spy that someone in the Slack shared. I'm going to read from it here real quick. Quote, Kevin's character was from the original Unbreakable script. In the original script, it was David and Kevin, and Elijah was advising David that he was a superhero in real life, and he bumps into one of the alter personalities in a train station and then follows him back. You'd see both of these things happen simultaneously. That was the original format of Unbreakable, and I pulled him out. It was too electric. I couldn't get the quiet movie I was trying to make. I'm not a big sequel guy. It goes against my engine, but it was fun to make this way. A movie that you thought was this genre for this whole movie, a psychological thriller, but then it clicks over into origin story at the end, which is great, end quote. So there's a lot of backing and evidence for what you're saying, Jeff. You know, like there's a lot of, like, M. Night clearly intended it to be the way you're talking about.
But intention is very different from execution.
Well, also it's like, here's the thing, Jeff, let me put this out to you. Because there are almost zero movies that fit into this category, can we say that there's like no rules for how to evaluate it? Do you know what I mean?
No.
Like there's never been another movie like this, quite like this, you know, that disguised itself as another movie. And so I don't know that we need to have like a standard for how we can evaluate this, because my standard for evaluating most movies is it needs to work as a movie separate from the twist. You know, like if a movie like this,
I don't understand. That is a strange notion to me, that somehow the twist is this thing that isn't the movie. The movie has a running time, and the entire running time is the movie, right? The twist informs the entire rest of the movie. Just because you didn't think you were watching the movie that you were watching doesn't mean you weren't watching that. Doesn't mean he didn't make that movie. He just didn't let you know until the end. You were always watching that movie. And I think that you have to evaluate the film based on the movie it was, even though you didn't know it was that movie.
Sure, so if you evaluate the film as a supervillain origin story, even then, so you're saying as a supervillain origin story, it is an amazing film. Is that what you're saying?
It is a lot of fun. It is a fun superhero movie. Yes.
I don't see how that changes anything. Like, honestly, it doesn't change the problems of the movie being a little too long, of the therapist not being very interesting for big chunks of it, of the characters doing very dumb things. Like, it doesn't, like, Jeff, it honestly sounds like you're doing more mental gymnastics to accept the movie as what they're presenting in the last few seconds, rather than, like, you saw this movie, you had reactions to it before it went full, comic book genre, comic book origins thing.
Right.
I think I'm judging that part of the movie as how I saw it. And now I could say, oh, well, yeah, it's kind of different now. But I can understand people not accepting how full tilt this movie goes into genre. Honestly, this movie is more supernatural than even Unbreakable was, right? The most supernatural thing in Unbreakable is like the visions of seeing where people are. But when there's a fight with that, yeah, there's super strengths too. But the fight with the security guard is just like, it's not hardcore. It's not like an X-Men fight. It's two guys tumbling around in a room and like breaking walls and stuff. But when you see a character physically transform, honestly, that's even more comic booky than what Unbreakable does. But that's what I'm saying too. Like, even if you were seeing it as an Unbreakable movie, I'd be like, this is honestly maybe pushing the boundaries of like that quiet tone of Unbreakable. Because go back and watch Unbreakable. That's a weird movie tonally. Like, it's very quiet. It's very much a drama, and it only towards the end does it really ratchet itself up as like a comic book movie. I don't even know if the Beast would fit into that movie at this point. It was probably a good idea to keep him out.
Firstly, I don't think that Jeff was necessarily arguing that it should be like in the tone of Unbreakable. I think he's just saying like, and in fact, M. Night in that interview segment I read implies that it would have been too far off from the tone. That's why he was not included in the first place. I feel like Jeff's love for this film is unbreakable, and I'm like, I'm coming at him with all these, Devendra, you and I were coming at him with all these different arguments for why the movie might not be that great.
I like the movie.
Let me try one more. Let me try one more argument, okay, Jeff? Let's see if this is gonna flummox you. Okay?
Yeah.
If we evaluate this movie on its own terms as a supervillain origin story, then I think it focused too much on the girls that he keeps trapped in his basement. Right? Like, those people are completely inconsequential to what's going on in this movie. And the movie should have...
Like, it's not one or the other. I know you're going to say I'm dancing here. But it's not one or the other. Like, the experience is... here's the experience that I had, right? Is judging. Oh, wait, I was wrong. Not the movie was wrong, not... it was doing a crappy job of being that movie, and now it's added a weird twist. I am forced by the filmmaker at the end of this movie to reevaluate the things that I thought during its running time. So those things, maybe we did spend too much time hanging out with those girls if this is just a superhero origin story, but it's a superhero origin story that's pulling a trick on me. So the time spent with those girls is there for a very specific reason, and that is to swerve you away from thinking it is what it is. Like, the movie is playing with you the entire time. It's feeding you a thriller about a psychopath, capturing these young girls, but it's not really about that. But it's giving you enough of that to keep you in a state of mystery, right? We're in the three stages of magic trick from The Prestige, right?
Yeah, the turn and the
the first one. What's the first one? The setup or something?
Yeah, I don't think it was the setup, but yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, you're sitting inside. That is the what's the
first part is called The Pledge.
The Pledge.
But this was fabricated for the movie, we should say, but yes.
But yeah, I know those aren't real things.
Yeah.
More accurately, to use actual magic terms, it's a what's the freaking word they use for distraction?
The second act is called The Turn.
No. Like, actual magicians, you're not distracted. You're they make you look at their left hand and they're doing something in their right.
Sleight of hand.
Yeah.
God, come on, guys. There's a word.
This is your idea, Jeff. Come on.
I know.
Come on.
We can't read your mind, Jeff.
Misdirection.
Misdirection, yes.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
He's misdirecting you throughout the whole movie to pull off the magic trick, right?
Okay.
To have you to give you that wonderful moment. The whole movie is built to give you that wonderful moment of oh my God, it wasn't what I thought.
Okay, Jeff. Let me try to describe an analogy that might capture my response to what you just said. Okay, this would be like if you sat down and someone was like gonna serve you a steak dinner, right? So you sit down and they serve you something that looks like steak. They put all the trimmings of steak. They put like au jus and they put A1 steak sauce or whatever, and like the steak rub is all over it. You know what I mean? And then you eat this thing, and you're like, well, that was an okay steak. It wasn't that good. And then it's like, well, all that crap I put on top was actually just to disguise that it was actually Brussels sprouts you were eating.
No. You're backwards. No. Dave, your analogy is backwards, because what to actually use your analogy, you say you think you're having a hamburger, this kind of fun thriller, and you're actually eating steak. Like, the whole time it was.
Okay, but fine. Okay, fine. Jeff, let me do it again. Okay, it's like someone gives you a hamburger and they put buns on top of it. They put lettuce and tomato on it, and then you eat it. You're like, well, that was a really weird tasting hamburger, and you're like, aha, it was steak the whole time. I put lettuce and tomato on top to fool you. It's like, well, you made the steak taste worse than it would have been otherwise, right? If you just served me the steak.
I've lost your train of thought.
No, I don't understand. This is very clear. This is very clear. You're saying like, hey,
steak and burger is the same thing.
Hey, you're saying like, hey, all this misdirection, all this stuff with the girls is in there for misdirection, and I'm saying, hey, Jeff, that makes the movie that it ends up being worse, right?
That's a fair opinion to have, and you can have that opinion. I don't share it.
Okay,
but I think it's a fair opinion. You can say that you felt like your time was wasted seeing some of that stuff, and I'm saying that, yes, during the course of the movie, there are things that I thought were a little indulgent. There were a few moments that didn't land great for me. And there were times when I was like, why are we doing this? But But then I realized why we were doing it.
Yeah, you were wondering why M. Night was putting lettuce and tomato on top of your steak.
Well, I didn't know it was a steak. I was just like, this burger.
I'm not really
Why are you
enjoying
putting?
this meal.
Why'd you make me eat steak with ketchup, M. Night?
I've had lots of burgers in the last year. This burger genre is really taking off. This doesn't taste like any of the burgers that I've been eating lately.
But as you're eating it, you don't feel good. Like
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Is as you're eating it,
it's gold in my toilet now. It's like, oh, better. It's a gold milk.
Wait, what'd you say, Devendra? What'd you say, Devendra?
I said it's sort of like if you ate the burger and you didn't enjoy the experience of it, right? But a couple hours later, you shit out gold, and it's oh
No,
that was worth it.
I would say to correct your analogy, it's not that you shit out gold. It's that you finish eating the burger and you're like, that is the weirdest burger I've ever tasted. Oh fuck, it was a Kobe beef burger. The aftertaste is so amazing. It does. It just lingers in your mouth, and I'm understanding why this burger was so good.
Maybe if it was like a lab grown burger.
That is amazing.
No,
Jeff.
wait, we've invented the best tasting lab
No,
grown
Jeff,
burger.
I think you perfectly captured it right there. Like that is it. That is it because the experience of eating it was still weird, but then after you're like, well, I guess that was pretty good.
Yeah, that aftertaste that lingers in your mouth.
It must have been. It must have been good because it was Kobe beef.
That's perfect, actually. Yes,
That's exactly how I feel. It must have been good.
Is better than eating it.
Yeah. It must have been good because it was an Unbreakable sequel, guys. It must have been good.
But for me, the moment where the chef comes out and goes, "It was Kobe beef the whole time," was worth the price of it. Like that moment of the chef, like, I gotcha. It was magical and made me quiver in my chair.
I think you just discounted your own idea there, Jeff, with that analogy.
But Jeff, this has been a lot of fun to talk with you about.
This is great. This is great.
All right.
Let's hate the inevitable sequel. Like,
yeah.
How much will that movie disappoint us after this? Like, your heart will be broken, Jeff, if that doesn't end up being good.
Well, David also expressed to me while I was in my car texting him that if the movie doesn't result in a sequel where Bruce Willis has to face off against James McAvoy, then the whole exercise was a waste of time. To which I responded, no.
I don't know if I quite put it like that, Jeff, but okay.
I thought I did a very good job of summing up your position. Is that not accurate?
Well, I think at the time my mind was still reeling from the implications that this was an Unbreakable sequel. But I think the point I was making was I was struggling with the feeling that I just expressed to you moments ago on this podcast, which is that like I don't think that just because of that reveal it makes the rest of the film retroactively better. And but I was like, okay, well, what could make the film retroactively better if there was a sequel that justified why we had to go through this whole origin story, right? I think that's what I was trying to get to.
Well, what I said was the fact that movie now exists in our imagination is a gift in and of itself. Like the fact that we can imagine Bruce Willis facing off against James McAvoy in a superhero movie is pretty badass.
Huh.
I don't know.
I also think if the Anya Taylor-Joy character becomes
she's Robin.
Yeah, if she is like a major character, that would help to redeem some of the missteps I think this movie took with her character.
Yeah,
so by like not resolving her plotline or by not giving her that much agency. You know what I mean?
I could see her being like an Oracle type character for David Dunn because she was the one telling the girls like, don't do this. This is dumb because of this. Like one punch from him will knock you out or something like that. So she is like strategic in a way that maybe David Dunn hasn't been.
So any other details about this film that we should mention, guys?
Oh, man.
I want to say something that in the Slack, Aldrin brought up that I thought was pretty great. He said, quote, small detail I loved in the film. Did anyone notice that when Kevin urgently emails the psychiatrist near the end of the film, she gets 20 emails? 20 emails from 20 of his 23 personalities because they're trying to warn her about the other 3 personalities, Patricia, Dennis, and Hedwig. I thought that was a neat little detail.
It seemed like she took a while to take action against her potentially harmful, like, so she knew the guy had this penchant for like making young girls dance, which, first of all, so he's on the sex offender registry, right? Like, he is, like, she could put in a call and the police should check in on him. I don't know why she went herself. Like, there's definitely enough there to be like, hey, maybe let's get some help here. I don't know.
I loved that I kind of never knew whether she was legitimately being nice to him or like playing him, you know? I always kind of was like, is she like working on a high level psychologist level of like just placating this guy, or does she like legitimately think he's a nice fella?
That would be a great twist, by the way, if she was the real supervillain manipulating the sub supervillain. Oh shit.
I thought she was great. Betty Buckley is the actress, and
she's great.
She's like mostly a TV actress. I don't really recognize her, but
the part when she confronted, him and got his other personality to come or admit that he was in the light was pretty amazing. Like that was a great scene, great build up, and I thought she overall did a great job. So. And
I think McAvoy he's so fun to watch when he turns into that sort of older woman character, and it's just watching him do that stuff is really fun. It's probably will sound whatever. I don't mean it to come off the way it probably will, but as an actor, I recognize that kind of thing isn't hard. Like that's not nearly as hard as just sort of being a normal character and conveying
being like broad is not as difficult as being very nuanced. Right?
Yes, exactly. So it's not like, oh my god, he's an amazing actor because he could do all these personalities. Yeah, throwing on an accent and being affected, that's the fun stuff, right? But he does it with aplomb, and he does it with such gusto that you feel there's a joy in watching him like dive in with both feet. He does a great job, and it's just really fun. I was never scared in this movie. I never felt any kind of horror to it. I was just intrigued, and I was on the edge of my seat during certain sequences, and I thought there was a lot of suspense. But it never felt like a horror movie, which it actually wasn't. So.
Until you started seeing pieces being eaten from people. Like it got gory and a little scary pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was pretty scared. I was pretty scared by it because I did think it was a horror movie, Jeff. Yeah. Like most people who saw the film, I imagine.
It seemed like a horror thriller, yeah.
Right. But the moment that when they were bringing her out of the zoo and she was passing all the animals, I was like, oh, is the twist that it was in her head the whole time?
Well, I'm glad it wasn't.
I did predict. I did like when I sat down with my friend to watch this film. I did say, "Hey, do you want to guess what the twist is?" Here are my two guesses. Number one, Anya Taylor-Joy's character Casey is another personality in James McAvoy's head. Right. And that certainly, I thought that might be the case when he doesn't immediately spray her when he gets in the car. By the way, the reason for that, just so people know. Another thing I gleaned from the Slack is that he'd apparently been tracking the two girls for quite some time, right?
He mentions that, yeah.
Yeah, so they were his target, and then like he didn't know that she would show up, and I guess he was fine to not spray her immediately as long as she was not a threat.
That still doesn't make sense. Like that's an explanation of what happened, but yeah, it doesn't.
Well, he only sprays people when they're not a threat, or sorry, when they are a threat.
When they are a threat,
when he's determined they are a threat.
I guess.
But anyway. So, what was I? I was in the middle of something else.
The second thing that you thought it could be the twist.
Oh, yeah. So the first thing was that she might be like another character in his head, or the other thing is that like she's the one with multiple personality disorder.
I'm glad we didn't.
And like he,
how great is it that everybody that goes into this movie is like, I think I know what the twist is, Shyamalan. I'm smarter than you, and he's like, fuck y'all.
One thing we should mention: this movie was shown months ago at Fantastic Fest, and somehow the twist has not leaked out.
I don't understand how that's possible. I don't understand how.
Kudos to that audience.
Even make it like how I think it's because people respect it so much. Like the audacity of doing it. We haven't even talked about the fact that the posters for Unbreakable in this movie like link up. Like it is so beautiful. This magic trick. It is so pure and wonderful. That I think people just respected the fact that he did it and were like, I ain't going to ruin that for people. Because all of us, when I came out of my screening, which was, before the movie came out too, everybody that I passed by was like, how do we not tell everyone this? you know?
Yeah. Well, what do you think the next movie will be called, guys?
Unbreakable and Split. By the way, Unbreakable and Split also themselves have kind of mirror image titles, or alternate opposite titles, opposing titles, as it were.
Yeah.
Don't know what the next movie will be. Glued back together. I don't know.
I hope he. I suspect he's probably not going to make the sequel we all want, but I really hope that would be so much fun to see.
I think he really enjoys the origin stories. Like, that's what we keep seeing a lot too. Like Unbreakable, people pointing out in the chat room, was kind of an origin story for both, the hero and the villain.
Right.
And
let's make that clear.
Yeah.
Like, Samuel L. Jackson's character, you find out at the end of Unbreakable, Devindra. You watched it most recently. Like, what is Samuel L. Jackson's character doing in Unbreakable? Like, what is his?
So he is basically a mass terrorist. Like, he has enabled the train crash, an exploded. He blew up a plane. And he set a hotel on fire. The total of victims, by the way, is like over 500 people. Like, he has killed a lot of people.
And the purpose of all this is
of his hero. Yeah, of his like mirror opposite. So basically, Mr. Glass is like the Joker of this universe, and the Beast or the Horde or whatever will be. He's like one of those minor Batman villains, like maybe Killer Croc or something. Like somebody who is really powerful. The physical. What's funny is that in Unbreakable, Samuel L. Jackson also points out that there's always two types of villains for every hero. There's the thinker and there's the physical one. And that was a really nice line. That definitely alluded to this idea earlier.
Yeah, so forgot about that line completely. But yeah, Samuel L. Jackson caused the train crash that found Bruce Willis's character and revealed him to be unbreakable. That train crash killed Kevin's father in this movie and is what led him to the life of loneliness and mental illness.
Well, it turns his mother. We assume his mother goes crazy because she's she's the one that abuses him and causes his mental collapse or splitting of his personalities. Yeah.
Would the follow-up be David Dunn and Mr. Glass working together again to stop this guy? Because I don't think the Horde would want to work with the dude who killed his father.
Well, he won't know that. How will he know that?
I don't know. I mean, that was also in the news. They were talking about. Yeah. It was all tied to Mr. Glass in the news. So once that all comes together, that'll be kind of interesting. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, Devindra and I had a number of issues with Split. Jeff had a euphorically positive response.
Still worth watching.
Which I cannot fault him for. Either way, I think we both thought, all three of us thought that the movie is worth considering. And I'm glad it's doing, because this is much closer to the M. Night Shyamalan we knew than films like The Happening, than films like The Last Airbender, than Lady in the Water, right? This is, regardless of whether you like the movie or not, we can all agree this is closer to the Shyamalan of Unbreakable, of Signs, of The Sixth Sense, right?
It's an insane turnaround. Like, I cannot stress this enough. Like, some people just didn't like Last Airbender. Fine. That movie broke my heart, because it was a terrible movie from one of my favorite and most respected directors, even though he had made a couple bad ones there. But he had also destroyed a franchise. Like, we'll never see another live-action Last Airbender movie, maybe not even Legend of Korra movie.
Well, not for
because
a while.
Of that.
Maybe not for a while. Maybe in like a couple decades we'll get another one.
Yeah, but it's not like that. As much as I love that series, not as much in the cultural, context as it was during that time. So that movie was bad. That was a failure that hit me on multiple levels. And this one, like, I like The Visit. I was like, oh, maybe he's coming back. Like, maybe he's a little humbled now. This movie gives me faith again, but I hope he kind of keeps that. Like, I hope he doesn't get a huge budget to do something big next time, because that's what destroyed him the first time around. It was his own ego. Like a Shyamalan character, he was kind of destroyed in a way by his own faults. I don't know. I would love to understand.
Yeah, I would love to understand like what happened between After Earth, The Happening, The Last Airbender, and The Visit. Like what?
He talked about After Earth.
What changed in his creative process? Because it seemed like he started recognizing what was actually quality filmmaking again. And that's very encouraging. So,
well, After Earth was probably a humbling experience for him too, because he talked about how that was not a good experience for him because it wasn't his thing. He didn't have full control over it, and we know how much of a control freak he is. So, between After Earth and his other failures and like his meltdown with Disney, I think it was right after Lady in the Water, like all of that hopefully taught him something. And by the way, I'm just going to lay this out here. My prediction for the next film, it's going to be something like Red Dragon. It's going to be David Dunn visiting Mr. Glass in jail They visited Hannibal Lecter in jail before we even knew who Hannibal Lecter was, to take down this crazy, insane serial killer.
That would be an awesome movie.
I would love to see that.
Why would you say Red Dragon, Devindra? Why not like Manhunter or Silence of the Lambs, huh?
Well, because the book was called Red Dragon, Dave. So get your history straight. Manhunter is the best. The Manhunter is the best version of that story. But yeah, we also saw it done in the Hannibal TV series as well in the last season. So that's a great story because it is all about that idea of somebody who's trying to be good, but also maybe trying to keep a dark part of himself, closed, and having to work with a supervillain. So yeah, I'd expect something like that, but who knows? Maybe he'll surprise us even more.
All right, I've been sufficiently schooled, Devindra. All right, well, that's going to bring us to the end of our review. Stay tuned to hear what we'll be reviewing next week. In the meantime, find more episodes of this podcast at /filmcast.com. Email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. Our music often comes from AdamWarrock.com, as well as SimonMHarris.com, who wrote our /filmcourt theme. And Jeff Kanata, in the meantime, where can people find more of your work on the internet this week?
I just want to say one quick thing.
Here it comes. Here it comes. The closing argument.
I know.
This was actually an episode of DLC all along.
Everybody, that's awesome, dude. Everybody is probably sick of me by this point, but I will say, I want to live in a world of magic. I'm an idealist. These kinds of moments I'm so grateful for. The feeling of euphoria I got at the end of this movie is unlike anything else. And it's the possibility of that is so potent in my worldview. And I think we could have more of it. If Marvel hadn't told us that Spider-Man was going to be in their movie, it would have provided this experience for people. There are those kinds of possibilities, and I really respect that. From my perspective, I think he put box office receipts behind getting this kind of a feeling out to his audience, and I love that. Anyway, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jeff Kanata with 2 N's and 1 T, and I do 2 other shows. One is called DLC. It's a video game show, and you can find that at 5by5.tv/DLC. And I also host a comedy science show called We Have Concerns, which you can find at wehaveconcerns.com.
All right, how about you, Devindra?
I'm at Devindra on Twitter. I also write about techandgadget.com and check out the podcast. I had to host the last episode there. So we're doing fun stuff with tech.
Jeff, I just want you to know it took a lot of control to not respond to what you just said. I'll let you have the last word on it, okay? But I'm on Twitter at Dave Chensky. That's Dave Chen, SKY. I just relaunched my blog. You can find it at davechen.net. And the new podcast I'm doing, Gen Pop, at genpopshow.com. Next week, we'll be reviewing 20th Century Women. 20th Century Women. Why aren't we doing a new release next week? It is because the new release schedule is pretty rough. Next week is A Dog's Purpose or Resident Evil: The Final Chapter. There's also this movie Gold, Stephen Gaghan movie, but it hasn't been getting great reviews. So 20th Century Women, a movie that has been getting great reviews. We're looking forward to checking that out. Thanks for listening to the official podcast of /film.com. We're out.
Thanks for not listening to this episode.
All right. Can you stick around a little bit, or are you guys...
I gotta run. It's the middle of the day for me here.
All right, Devindra, take off.
Thanks for putting up with me, Devindra.
No, that was fun. I love those
Jeff,
arguments are the best.
Very enjoyable.
Those are the best arguments. Yeah. Well, we all love something, but for different reasons. All right, guys. Later. Enjoy the show. Bye.
Yep. Jeff, can you stick around for a few minutes? You got to go.
Absolutely.
All right, let's just talk for a few minutes.
Yeah.
No hard feelings, Jeff?
Of course not. No, it's super fun. I know I'm a little incorrigible at times.
That was one of the most intense arguments we've ever had on this show. All right, is there anything you want to talk about? I have a couple things.
Yeah, go. You bring up your stuff. I don't think there's anything on.
Yeah. Let me. We have a few. Let me at least get one email in here.
Did you see Kellyanne Conway coin the term alternative facts this morning?
I did see that. I was more impressed that she threw Sean Spicer under the bus literally on day one.
What a world.
Sean Spicer's probably like, I am in for another 1,400 days of this.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It's gonna be intense.
That dude. Yeah. He's not lasting the whole 4. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right.
Which will be a boon to Christian Spicer, who owns @Spicer on Twitter. who's looking down the barrel of a long 4 year.
Welcome to the Slash Filmcast After Dark. It's a time of the show where we talk about a bunch of random things that didn't come up during the show, just like random things here and there that are of no importance to anyone. So, listen, don't listen. I don't give a crap. Here we go, Jeff. Sometimes we like to use the After Dark to get into emails. This email comes in from Chris from South Coast, United Kingdom. Chris writes in, heard you mention in passing a few episodes recently the animated movie Sing. I might be mishearing, but it seemed like you mentioned it jokingly, passing it over for terrible. The world needs more films like Sing. It was a happy movie. My wife and I left the cinema with smiles on our faces and springs in our steps. It wasn't the best film ever. It wouldn't make a top 10 list, and the overarching story was completely predictable, but it was a happy movie with nice characters and a positive message. I think the world could do with more of that right now.
That's nice.
Jeff, any intention on seeing Sing?
No. I do. I have to say that now that I have a child, it seems that all I hang out with are people with children. And the weekend that Sing was sort of happening, I was still on quite a high from seeing Moana. And I was mentioning it to everybody. Oh, my God, you going to see Moana? You taking your kids to see Moana? Almost universally, everybody was like, I really want to see that Sing. I'm really much more interested in seeing Sing. So that may have colored my references to Sing a little bit of like, really, that's the movie that people would rather see than Moana. But I'm very pleased to hear that Sing is a positive, lovely experience, and of course I would want to support those things.
Indeed. 70% Rotten Tomatoes. That's not too bad. But based on the trailer, it seemed like it used a lot of.
Based on the trailer, it looks like it wasn't a movie. It was just a series of animated music videos.
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, just the song selection too. It seemed not necessarily like a selection I'd want to go to the theater to see, if that makes sense.
Right.
But anyway, some people like it. Unabashedly happy movies, right? I guess we could use more of those.
Sure. Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
We should mention, by the way, like just this After Dark, by the way, is just me and Jeff. Devindra had to take off, but Jeff, one thing I wanted to mention to you was this Louis C.K. bit where he talks about how when you have kids, like you end up hanging out with like parents of your kids' friends.
Yeah, and you want to like make sure they choose their friends based on how cool the parents are.
Well, it's basically like there's no reason you hang out with all these people you never otherwise would have hung out with, because your kids choose each other's friends. Like they choose their friends based on no criteria. Like they're the same size. That's why they like each other.
Yeah, proximity.
Yeah. I mean, your child is obviously not old enough to actually have chosen friends. But one day they will.
Friends of any kind, really.
Yeah, friends of any kind. But one day he will, and I'm sure we'll hear about all the people you are forced to hang out with. That you would
my wife is in a mommy group. So I've already had mommy group meetups where I got to meet all the husbands of the mommies and all the kids, and it's cool. You just kind of expand your social circle a bit because all these people you would never run into. So it's cool.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how that plays out as he gets older. I'll be curious to hear.
Skeptical, Dave.
I'll be curious to hear what happens. Teddy writes into /filmcast@gmail.com. Teddy writes in, January has a reputation for being the dumping ground for lowbrow comedies, underworld sequels, and franchise non-starters, but it's usually my favorite time of year for movies. It's when I catch up on the many prestige films still in theaters after their late-year Oscar-qualifying release. Many of these films retroactively end up on my personal best-of list, even though my list was quote-unquote done the year before. Do you /filmcasters consider your best of lists ever changing, accommodating movies released that year, even if you watch them months or even years later, or are they frozen in time? I was inspired to ask this after listening to last year's best of and hearing that David said 45 years would have been on his best of list had he seen it in 2015. Shouldn't it be there nonetheless? Best of lists and like.
How do you respond to that?
Are you asking rhetorically or are you asking me directly?
I'm asking you directly.
In my opinion, the best of year list is a product that we put together for the consumption of /filmcast listeners.
I completely agree.
Like, it is not a universal, like, Dave Chen's best of list that's going to be preserved for all time in the diary of David Chen, in the annals of David Chen.
I guess I misinterpreted that. I thought you meant it's a product we put together and thus is frozen in time. Which
Yeah,
is why
yeah,
I was
yeah.
so
No, that's what I'm saying.
heartbroken that
No,
I
no.
forgot to include Captain Fantastic, because I felt like that is the little time capsule that when people look back and say, what was it, what was my top 10 of the year? That's what I won't remember that. Oh yeah, I also saw Fences later and loved it or whatever.
Oh,
So,
see, yeah. So same statement, but different sentiments, right?
yeah.
So my thing is like we put this thing out based on arbitrary rules, like and based on an arbitrary time of year and based on an arbitrary number of movies that we've seen up until that point,
Right.
and we put it out, and people listen to it, and they hopefully get some good recommendations from it. They hopefully get some entertainment from it, and then we move on with our lives. Like I don't think of it as like this is preserving my preferences for that year because of all the things I just said. Maybe we see a movie the day after.
Well, I would go a step further and say my best of 2016 list is the best movies I saw in 2016, not the best movies that were released in 2016, because I can't possibly see all of them. So it has to be the best movies that I saw in 2016.
Right. That's true. But I'm just saying, like, maybe we made our list on, we did our episode on December 29th, and on December 30th I see Fences, and it should be on there. You know what I mean? Like, it's just there's too many things to consider to try and make it like actually the best movies you saw in 2016. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, but I also think that if 5 years from now you go back and go, what were my favorite movies of 2016? You're going to look at that list. You're not going to go. You're not going to. It is a record. It is it is cast in amber. It is what you thought that day.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Like I just haven't done that very much. You know what I mean? I don't. I always look forward, Jeffrey, not backward. Right? I don't go back and think like, what were my top 10 movies? Just because I know it's so malleable. I am working on a top 10 of all time list. However,
would you not consult your previous top 10s of the year to help compile a best of ever?
I did not consult any of them actually.
Wow.
Because I guess I feel like I know. I know what my top 10 are. Or I don't know, but I know what's going to be in the selection process. You know what I mean?
David Chin is infallible and does not need outside resources to help him do anything, really.
Speaking of infallible, Jeff, have you seen this new show, The Young Pope, on HBO?
I have not.
It is...
Is it good?
Pretty rough, Jeff.
I got to say, if it wasn't made by HBO, I would have zero interest in it, and only interested in it because it has HBO. I'm like, well, HBO makes good stuff, so I guess I should watch it.
Yeah, apparently it aired in the UK months ago and did not, like, no one's talked about it because apparently it didn't get that much buzz. But yeah, it's pretty ridiculous, Jeff. It's a pretty ridiculous show.
I mean, Dave, it's called The Young Pope, right?
I do know that.
Okay, so ridiculous kind of comes with the territory.
The actors all look like look and sound like they're reading off cue cards. The dialogue is preposterous. The premise is ludicrous. Like, it is a very silly thing.
I would have thought The Young Pope would be a ridiculous concept.
I wish it was a little bit more trashy. It does feel very imbued with self-importance, and like it's kind of full of itself. I don't like using terms like full of itself or pretentious to describe films because I think it's a rather lazy criticism. Like, you need to say, what about it? Like, what does that mean to be pretentious? But that's the only word that comes to mind when I think of how to describe the series.
Wow.
I wish it was a little bit more silly and trashy, because then I could hate watch it. But it's not enjoyable enough on that level, in my opinion, to really be like a enjoyable hate watch.
I just love the fact that somebody said, "Let's do for popes what Muppet Babies did for Muppets." That's just gold. That's television gold right there.
I don't know if I
He's
quite
a
agree
pope.
with that analogy, Jeff.
Hey, I want to make a show about a pope. Oh man, I know we've gotten so many pope pitches, but all the popes, they're all so old. They're like in their 70s. Oh, you're right. How can I make a pope thing and not have him be in his 70s? Oh, I got it. A young pope. I think that's how the meeting went.
So Patrick Monahan had this tweet that has over 1,400 retweets, and it's like a script here. He's writing a script. He's like, writer. So there's this pope, right? HBO exec. Go on. Writer. But get this, he's young and he fucks. HBO exec. Cigar falls out of mouth.
All right, that's way better than my little improv.
Yeah.
Just let you read that before I embarrassed myself with the voices.
No worries. Well, anyway, Jeff, wanted to just mention real quick in the After Dark before we wrap it up here, a couple things. Firstly, this Slack that I created. That
you were proud of that.
Sign up for at slackfilmcast.com, which for some reason you seem to be mocking me for relentlessly. I don't know why. But you have not been in a Slack before, right, Jeff?
I am Slack free. I've been no Slack. I've been picking up the Slack. No, sorry.
Yeah, it is a really interesting experience, I think, because it's like real time, but also kind of asynchronous, but mostly real time. And keeping track of it is exhausting. Like I have a couple of other Slacks that literally have. I'm in a couple of other Slack groups that literally have maybe less than a dozen people. So it's like 6 people, and you can read everything, every message that everyone reads, right? Like everyone types in, I should say. Mm-hmm. And in this Slack, there are currently over 600 people, and I think people are just finding it incredibly exhausting because you just cannot keep up with everything that's happening.
You're not really selling this, Dave. Or maybe you're trying to cull the herd a little bit, so there's fewer messages.
I guess no. I'm just trying to say that like I think your expectations going in, like a lot of people are in Slack groups that have 10, 20 people.
I see.
And they haven't been.
It's really
in
made
Slack
for
group
that.
It's really made for that, right? They haven't been. I'm using it for a purpose it's not made for.
I see.
But yeah, they haven't been in a Slack group that has this many people in it, and I think it's like incredibly disorienting. But I would love to hear your thoughts on it at some point if you have a chance.
Yeah, no, I will. My mother has been in town last week, so I.
Even though you seem to have zero respect for the entire concept of it, would love to hear.
I love it. What are you talking about? I love it.
Would love to hear. Anyway, if you want to sign up, go to slackfilmcast.com. But it is interesting. I'm looking forward to like when we do like when the Oscars come on, we can have like a chat room for that. That'll be fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Also wanted to mention this other thing, Jeff. So I relaunched my personal blog recently, davechen.net, and I had this like fear go through me recently. This is the motivation behind the personal blog relaunch. Is Ars Technica? Have you read Ars Technica before?
Oh yeah, of course.
They released this company Death Watch for 2017. They're like, here are the companies we don't think are going to survive 2017. And Yahoo's on there, and a couple of other companies are on there, and Twitter is on there. Now, Twitter, I don't think Twitter is going to die at the end of 2017, but there is a lot of speculation that Twitter will not be the same. It might be sold this year. It might be drastically changed.
Isn't it crazy that a thing that literally the president of the United States uses every day can't figure out how to make any money? That's pretty wild.
It is. And I mean, I can just tell you that like they're trying to play Facebook's game and failing. Like Facebook just has much more information and much more detail on you. They have a much more detailed like social graph. Your connections on Facebook in general, not for maybe for you and I, not really, but in general, are people who you know in real life, and that's some really valuable information for advertisers. Whereas for Twitter, not really the case. Like I follow 1,700 people or 1,200 people or whatever. I don't even know that many people in real life. I have some amount of thousands of followers. I certainly that many people don't know me in my personal life. And so it's just a different it's a different graph, right, of like who the people you know are. And so it's less valuable to advertisers. And not to mention, it's a lot harder to get people to click on things in Twitter. I don't know if you've noticed this, Jeff, but when you send out links, like they get, it's much more difficult for something to go viral on Twitter. Like something can start going viral on Twitter, but it's hard for something to really get like a video on Facebook can get 20 million views, right? On Twitter, that almost never happens. Just because when was the last time you watched a full length video on Twitter? It just is, the usage paradigms are so different. Anyway, going all this just to say that like I was seized with this fear that like if Twitter goes away, what am I going to have? Like, I doubt it's going to go away completely, but it might change drastically. Like, what am I going to have left of? Like, you and I put in massive quantities of time on Twitter. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
And continue to do daily, more than I probably should. I'm conflicted about this because there is a very large part of me that thinks a world without Twitter is a better world to live in.
Yeah.
And it, I'm not usually that much of a Luddite, that much anti-technology, but and this is somebody that recognizes my own addiction to it. I kind of feel like if they went away and it was forced out of my hand, it might be better for me. And I don't know if I have the willpower to impose that on myself. But I also feel like it's kind of too big to fail. Like it is a cultural phenomenon. Twitter. Nobody says, the president said this on Facebook. Nobody says, this famous athlete got in trouble because he criticized people on Facebook. Twitter is a thing unlike anything else, and I can't imagine it doesn't continue to exist in some way. I wouldn't say some form. I think the form stays the same. I think there's got to be a way it continues to exist, even if as a corporate entity it doesn't remain profitable. I think that this, as a service, as a sort of fundamental information distribution idea, it's too important to cease to exist.
I agree with you in theory, but we all forget that Twitter is a private company. It's not open source. It's not. Right. There's no open graph there. I think there was a really great article I read a while ago about. I'm trying to find it, but it's basically about how like we think we're meeting in the public sphere, right, with something like Twitter, but really we're just. Oh, here we go. New York Magazine wrote this article. Twitter is a mall, so it's going to regulate itself like a mall. Right, and like
hasn't been.
Here's a another article that was written recently. Lindy West wrote for The Guardian. I've left Twitter. It is unusable for anyone but trolls, robots, and dictators. So she was a very well-known Twitter personality and author, and left Twitter because she could not contribute more of her energy and time to helping to increase the value of a company that facilitates hate groups and the rise of dictators.
I mean, I do get value out of Twitter, but increasingly that the pie chart of that value is shrinking, and the much larger portion of the pie chart is devoted to just getting into stupid arguments with people whose opinion I shouldn't care about anyway. And I'm not proud of that, and I kind of have a hard time resisting it. But I kind of see the point that she's making. Yeah.
But in this article by Max Reed, Twitter is a mall, which he wrote in January 2016, about a year ago. By calling itself the free speech wing of the Free Speech Party, Twitter has consistently positioned the company as a kind of digital town square and driven every user policy decision into the realm of speech wars. And it's unfortunately true that in many ways, Twitter fulfills the traditional function of being a gathering place for the free exchange of ideas. But when you subcontract the provision and maintenance of a town square to a corporation, it's going to be run like a town square. It's going to be run like a mall. And make no mistake, Twitter is a mall. Its function is to entice people to spend time on it so they can be sold something. I don't mean this pejoratively necessarily. I love Spencer's Gifts and Auntie Annie's. And in many cases, malls can be good places to hold conversations about politics between friends. But if you make people uncomfortable, if you yell or harass or loudly and consistently express political opinions, eventually mall cops on Segways show up to demand your ID and hustle you out, maybe permanently, end quote.
We need more mall cops.
We totally need more mall cops on Twitter. But his point is just that it is a private corporation, right? Like we think it's like a public space, like in the town square, but it is a mall. Like it's run by a company. They're going to do things to keep it how they want it to be run. And so I realized, I've put in, how many tweets have I made? Let's look this up. How many tweets have you made, Jeff? You can see.
I'm going to guess about 40,000, but let me look.
Mine is 40,000, 40.1 thousand. That's how many tweets I've made.
I have made 49,000.
49,000. Right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of tweets. It's probably an average of many tweets a day. It's probably dozens, if not hundreds of hours we've spent on the site. Now,
not to mention how much time spent just reading other stuff.
Right. Now we've gotten a lot of value out of that, right? It's not like we haven't gotten a lot of value out of it. Like, I'm not saying it's therefore worthless. We've gotten people to click on links. We've launched Kickstarters. You know what I mean? We've increased our profile online. Like there's a lot of value.
You had meaningful interaction with a lot of people.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. But I realize this is a mall. It's a mall, by the way, that's really that's lost hundreds of millions of dollars. And who knows how long it will continue to exist on the largesse of its funders and investors, aka the people who bought into its stock and stuff. And I was seized with this fear that it could all just go away. One day it could all just go away, and all this you can download all your tweets and stuff, but like it's all just gonna go away. And Jeff, at some point the open web, like blogs and stuff, that was supposed to be the future, and then instead we ended up with these closed systems like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and so on. And I'm like, hey, I'm bringing it back to the 90s. So I relaunched my blog, got it on WordPress, which is an open source standard.
Promote it on MySpace.
Got to promote it on MySpace.
You got your AOL and Prodigy accounts. You're doing it.
Well, the thing that's different is like I own all the content on the blog, right? Like unless like servers stop being a thing that I can pay for, or unless I can stop running, like unless the infrastructure for the internet ceases to exist, my blog will exist for as long as I want it to.
Well, was this topic just an ad for your blog?
It really was. I guess it was both an ad for my blog, which is by the way at davechen.net, but also an encouragement to someone like yourself to put more time into something that you can control. You know what I mean?
I think that's a great point, Dave. I will make an ancillary point. It's really not the same topic, but it comes from the same retrospection about Twitter and the amount of time I put in on Twitter. I've sort of come to, just in the last couple of days, I've come to a new New Year's resolution. And that is, just in the last couple of days, I have been, I have succumbed to the scourge of helping to spread fake news.
Oh shit! I totally forgot about this. Continue.
Yes,
go ahead.
of being tricked into, not tricked. It's on me. I shouldn't offload the responsibility. It is my fault. Yeah. But I have seen things that looked true and retweeted them without checking it.
Yep.
And I have decided that I am no longer going to get news bits from Twitter or Facebook or any social media, that I'm going to read the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. And anytime that I do see something that piques my interest, I'm going to go look at the article, Google it, not just click a link from a social media site to read what somebody sends me. And I think that is going to improve my life. But it's a big change because it really bummed me out. As much as I've railed against fake news, and even I hate using that term now because it's been co-opted. Yeah. But the idea of these sites that make things up whole cloth, that are unfettered, unchecked, false claims about world events. That I'm going to only go to trusted news sources that actually have standards and best practices. And I encourage other people to do the same. I think it's going to require a little extra effort, but I think that effort will be worthwhile.
Jeff, firstly, everything you said is great. Like, it's very admirable, and I encourage everyone to do what you're saying. But I cannot let this pass without giving you total shit about this, Jeff. And okay, so here's what happened. Okay, Donald Trump's inauguration speech, which some would argue is terrifying for many reasons, was found to have an actual line that Bane says in The Dark Knight Rises, right?
Yes.
So on Twitter,
and thematically, the whole speech is really similar.
It's very Bane-like. It's very Bane-esque, right? And so a lot of people started tweeting out this humorous juxtaposition. Humorous juxtapositions do really well on social media, right? Like you have, here's Donald Trump's speech. Here's Bane's speech. It's hilarious. Retweet 1,000 times. So So then some fake versions of that started springing up, right? And one of them was a comparison between Donald Trump's speech and Colonel Miles Quaritch from Avatar. And here's the quote from Donald Trump's speech. Whether a child is born in the urban sprawl of Detroit or the wind-swept plains of Nebraska, they look up at the night sky, they fill their heart with the same dreams, and they are infused with the breath of life by the same almighty creator. And that is real. That actually came from his inauguration speech. Here is a quote from Avatar that it supposedly comes from. And whether a human child is born on Earth or in the space colonies or the windswept planet of Kabuska, they look up at the same stars, they fill their life with the same dreams, and they are infused with the breath of conquest by the same almighty creator. And so people juxtapose these two quotes. They said, it's hilarious. He took it from Miles Quaritch from Avatar, who, by the way, Miles Quaritch is a monster in that movie, right?
Right.
And some people tweeted this at us and said, now who's culturally irrelevant, right? This is a long-running joke about whether Avatar is culturally relevant or not. And you can't get more culturally relevant than getting plagiarized in the president's inauguration speech. Well, turns out so when I saw that, I was like, A, that's hilarious if true. B, I don't remember Miles Quaritch saying anything like that.
I had the same thought, by the way. I was like, I don't remember him saying that, but
Miles
it's on
Quaritch
Twitter, so
he
it must be true.
He does not speak that much in the movie. And when he does speak, I remember a lot of his lines because he's a very good actor and his lines are very memorable. Like,
Jujubes
Pandora
for
will
eyes.
eat you up and shit you out. Like, I remember those lines. It's very...
Eat your eyes like jujubes.
Yeah, exactly. Eat your eyes like jujubes, exactly. But you and I both saw this. And you retweeted it, I think, and I actually shared it in the Slack Filmcast. And
Which is even worse, Dave, because those people trust you.
Yeah, no,
you
seriously.
created that world.
Jeff, remind me never to mention the Slack Filmcast to you again. But anyway, you and I both hate fake news, aka news that is basically lies, right? You and I hate lies that are intended to get more clicks, that are not explicitly presented as such. We're fine with The Onion and Clickhole and stuff.
Sure.
And so when you realized what you had done, you deleted your tweet, your retweet. You were disgusted with yourself, and you felt very bad about it. And I deleted my Slack message and I apologized to everyone as well. Like we hate to be vectors of propagating falsehoods, right?
Right. Indeed.
But Jeff,
You're gonna
can't
say,
help.
Wait. You're gonna say
Yep.
that the fact
Yep.
that people didn't know it wasn't from that movie means that no one remembers that movie. It means that the movie wasn't relevant. QED, ipso facto.
Avatar is not culturally relevant. Yeah.
Right. To which I say, hogwash. I mean, fine, maybe a little, but it's not like you could. There's a lot of movies that are, you could probably pull something out of, claim it's from Star Wars, right? Something that's a little Star Warsy, and you'd fool some Star Wars fans too.
Okay, that is what you just said is absolute nonsense. But it's okay. It's okay, Jeff. You're still reeling from your lies, your web of lies. So. Anyway,
the thing that makes me so angry is the there's like, Dave, can I get real for a second? Nobody's listening to this by now. We know that to be true. No one listens.
No one's made it this far in the podcast.
So I'm gonna be real for a second, and I hope none of them are listening. But there's like 5 people that always respond to me on Twitter whenever I tweet anything remotely political, which recently has been more and more.
Yeah.
Because I feel it's my civic duty to speak my mind. But there's literally 5 people, and they're all consistently obtuse in their stubborn, I should say, more stubborn in their commitment to being obstinate.
Uh-huh.
And it empowered them when I messed up. Like, you can't get one misstep. You can't make one misstep because they're like, aha! See, look at you with your spreading lies. That means CNN is wrong and the New York Times is wrong. It's all the same.
Ipso facto.
Yeah.
E pluribus unum.
Yeah, you tweeting out this Avatar quote when it was wrong means that CNN lies to everyone. And I got to tell you, Dave, those 5 people, and I hate to even empower them, but luckily no one's listening right now. But I hate to even empower them.
I guarantee you they're listening, but continue.
These 5 individuals are enough to make me just want to quit all social media. And like their tireless efforts to always reply.
Wait, I don't understand why you don't just block these people, Jeff.
I do block some.
Or mute them. Mute them.
Feel like they feel like they are big fans of mine. And
I see.
You know, these people are
just mute them, Jeff. They won't even know.
I know, but that just feels like they won because I can't hear dissenting opinion.
That is absolute. That's not correct. That's not
okay.
Correct.
Because it's not that I can't hear dissenting opinion. It is that their responses take up so much of my mental energy that I to kind of even try to understand where they're coming from when they respond with such nonsense and such illogic. That's the hard part for me, is the illogic that I'm always faced with. That when I point out something and then they respond with, you know, these weird, the way arguments go on the internet. Everybody, I don't need to even give an example. Everyone knows how an argument goes on the internet, where it's not actually an argument anymore. It just becomes a thing that straw man, fucking whatever the thing gets, whatever. It is so draining and taxing. And I will close my app on my phone and I will walk around and I'll be brushing my teeth going to bed and I'll still be thinking about their stupid retort. And it's literally just 5 people in the world that are vexing me so. And I think you're right. Maybe I just need to mute them. But
yeah.
it is enough that I go, why should I even participate in this medium if this is the result? If these people are going to just outlast me, like their commitment and ability to constantly throw bullshit in my roadway is so much more long lasting than my willpower to swerve around the bullshit. You know what I'm saying? It's a bad metaphor.
I have a few thoughts on this.
Okay, please.
Firstly, I want to agree with Dustin in the chat room that you are now the Kellyanne Conway of the Slash Filmcast.
What does that mean?
I'm just joking.
Because I retweeted the Avatar thing?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Secondly...
Wait, no, one of the things this morning, real quick, was I tweeted out a Bill Kristol quote, arch conservative Bush White House advocate Bill Kristol was interviewed by CNN, I think, and said that he was embarrassed by Sean Sand's display and like every Republican should be embarrassed that a person walked out and just straight up lied. And I, just tweeted out his quote, and I got such a raft of shit from people on the left, like, how dare you endorse anything this man says? And I was like, yeah, putting out one quote of his means that I've endorsed everything Bill Kristol has ever said, and now all his positions are my positions because whatever. Anyway, but that's
all right. So I have 2 more thoughts for you, Jeff, as we wrap this up. Firstly, I mean, I'm very sorry that you've had to deal with this, but I think it's like the airplane safety video says, right? You got to put on your own safety mask before you can help those around you. In this case, you got to practice some self-care here. Self-care means only putting things into your world that are going to help you to, be as encouraging and uplifting and helpful to people as you can be. And that means muting these suckers.
But don't date. I agree with that and appreciate you saying it. But isn't not hearing the other side kind of how we gotten into this position? People constructing bubbles of their own echo chamber. I'm conflicted in that respect.
Yeah, I would say that I don't want to get into this whole debate right now, but like, I guess I would say that like, the Republican Party made it their mission in the last 8 years to delegitimize and to subvert the will of Barack Obama's agenda, right? That was their only mission. They had no interest in reaching across the aisle or doing anything. And, you know, liberals are always the more friendly group. They're always like, hey, maybe we can rise above this. When we go low, you go high. Or when they go low, we go high, blah, 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 blah. We can rise above this. It didn't work. And I don't feel like taking a more enlightened approach is going to be the best path going forward. That's just a general overall thought, but in this case, I disagree with you. Because if going back to the airplane mask analogy, if you can't, you know, be like a well-balanced, happy individual, then nothing good is going to happen. Like forget about like any of the political change you want to see. Like if you're like going around bitter all the time, like nothing good can happen. So like that is a precondition for anything else good happening. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Here's the other point I'll make, and Kevin Smith actually made this great video about it that I'll share with you. But basically, he, you know, Kevin Smith is a guy who has like won at life, right? I mean, he's rich. He like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people like listen to what he has to say. He's directing TV shows and films that he wants to make on his own terms, and for a while, he was so caught up in the online space that he was saying like, "Oh man," people would ask him like, "Oh, why are you pissed? Why are you so upset? You're in a bad mood. Why are you in a bad mood?" And he's like, "Oh, well, someone said something mean to me on the internet today." And to people on the outside world, that's just that's ridiculous. Like, who gives a crap? Some 12-year-old like didn't like you. Why are you letting that impact the fact that you know you've won at life? And you know, Jeff, your successes are of a different kind. But you've also won at life in many ways, as we discussed in the last After Dark. and you know, why are you letting these randos like impact your mood? You know, it's a thing. Like whatever you need to do to not let that happen, I think is justified because it shouldn't happen. Like there's so much good in your life. There's so much good to celebrate. There's so much crap that you bring to your own life that you don't need other people helping you. You know what I mean? So I feel like just whatever you can do, don't give people that power over you. That's my encouragement.
I think you're right. I just I have a hard time, Dave.
All right, man. Well,
I appreciate it.
We're all rooting for you, Jeff.
Yeah,
I mean that. I mean that.
You know, there's bigger fish to worry about, but yeah.
All right. Well,
maybe we can just all hope that Twitter gets turned off. We just turn it off.
Yeah.
We'll all be better off.
Indeed.